This will be for the kind exercise, construct sinusoidal functions. Now, before doing this exercise, you need to be familiar with the basic sine and cosine functions. Okay, I have another video on this. But anyhow, the one in red is the sine of x, and the one in blue is the negative sine of x. All right, so we're going to start each problem, with either one of these two, or for the cosine of x. All right, the one in red is the cosine of x, and the one in blue is the negative cosine of x. So you need to familiarize yourself with the characteristics of all four of these graphs. The graph of a sinusoidal function intersects its midline at 0, -7, and has a minimum point pi over 4, -9. Write the formula. So I highly recommend you sketch one period of each function. Okay, so I'm going to do that first. And by the way, it says sinusoidal. That could mean sine or cosine. All right. So the midline is at 0, -7. Okay, so right there, that's 0, -7. And the minimum is at pi over 4, -9. So it goes from the midline to the minimum. So it's going down at first. Okay, so it's going down, and it hits the minimum at pi over 4, comma, -9. Now, I'm going to sketch the rest of this just for fun, okay? They said this was the midline, right? They said this intersected the midline right here. So the midline is going to be like that, okay? And if we kept going with this graph, I'll do it in a different color. If we kept going, they said this was the minimum, okay? So it's going to return to the midline and then hit a maximum and then come back to the midline again. So that is one full period. All right. So out of the four graphs at the beginning that we did, it's in more detail in another video, which one starts at the midline and then heads down to the minimum? Well, that is going to be the negative sine. All right, so we're going to start with the negative sine. Now, the basic formula is going to be A times the sine of B times X plus C. All right, so let's start with A. The absolute value of A is the amplitude, but this one's going to be negative. Anyhow, amplitude, it goes from minimum to midline, and that is going to be the vertical distance. Okay, amplitude is always positive because it's a distance. So the amplitude is just this distance here. It goes from -9 to -7. Okay, so it's going to be -9 minus -7. All right, two negatives make it positive. -9 plus 7 is -2, and the absolute value is 2. Okay, of course, you can just put the bigger number first. You won't need absolute value. But the amplitude is 2, but A is going to be -2, and that's because this heads down first. And the sine function that goes like this is the negative sine. All right, and now for B, we need to use the period. Now the period is all the way from here to here. Okay, but this horizontal distance right here is only going to be 1/4 of the period. All right, because it just goes from midline to minimum. So this horizontal distance, it goes from pi over 4 to 0. So pi over 4 minus 0 is just pi over 4. So 1/4 of the period is pi over 4. Therefore, the whole period is going to be pi over 4 times 4. And that just equals pi. Now the formula for period, the period equals 2 pi over b. So if the period equals pi and the formula is 2 pi over b, we just need to solve for b. And of course, if b were 2, this would be 2 divided by 2, and you would just get pi. So clearly, you can just do this in your head. B equals 2. All right, because 2 divided by 2 would give you pi. So since b equals 2 right here, we're going to have bx, or it's going to be 2 times x. And finally, the midline, the plus c, that's easy because they gave that to us in the problem. Okay, this line right here, we're looking at the y-axis. The y-coordinate is just -7. So this line right here is y equals -7. So for the value of c, it is just -7. So that's it. Okay, -2 sine parentheses of 2x outside the parentheses -7. All right, the graph of a sinusoidal function, maximum 0.08, minimum 0.52. Let's sketch it. All right, so the max is at 0,8. All right, that's 0,8. And the minimum is at 5,2. So it goes down a little bit. Let's say about right there. That's going to be 5,2. All right, so the function starts at the max, goes to the minimum. Okay, and I'll complete the one period in a different color. If we go back up to the maximum, that's going to be one period of the function. Okay, again, if you look at the 4 possibilities, the one that starts at a max and heads to the minimum is a positive cosine. All right, so that's going to be a cosine function. And the formula is the same, except you just replace sine with cosine. So a times cosine of bx plus c. Okay. Now a is based on the amplitude, and the amplitude, if you go from a max to a min, you need to take half of that number. Okay, so for the amplitude, it's just going to be half the distance of the max to the min. So we're looking at vertical distance, we're looking at y-coordinates, it's just going to be 8 minus 2. Half of 8 minus 2. And if it comes out to a negative, take the absolute value. Okay, half of 6 is just 3. So the value for A is just 3. Now for B, we need to find the period. All right, and let's see. All right, we need to find the period, and if we travel horizontally from the maximum to the minimum, that distance right there is only half of the period. Okay, so horizontally we traveled from 0 to 5. So half of the period is going to be 5 minus 0, or just 5. All right, that's a 1/2 right there. Therefore, if half of the period is 5, then we just take the 5 and multiply it by 2 to get the full period. Okay, and the formula for the period equals 2 pi over b. As a result, we can solve for b. Okay, cross multiplying, 10 times b is 10b. And if you put this over 1, 1 times 2 pi is 2 pi. Solving for b, you divide both sides by 10. And 2 over 10 is 1/5. So we have pi over 5. All right, that's the value for b. So for b, we're going to do a pi over 5. And that's times x. Finally, the midline c. This is a max, this is a min. So the midline is going to be right in between the max and the min. All right, if the max is at 8 and the minimum is at 2, you just find the average. 8 plus 2 divided by 2, and that equals 5. So this midline right here is basically y equals 5. That's exactly between 8 and 2. So the plus c is going to be a plus 5. And that's it. Okay, 3 cosine, parentheses, pi over 5x, outside parentheses, plus 5.